I betrayed my fiancé with his own brother after stealing the wedding money and running away. He unleashed proof of our lies in front of everyone, leaving us with debts, addiction, and a family that treated us like strangers. I never imagined that my life would take such a turn. If someone in college had warned me about what would happen, I would have laughed in their face. I met Ricardo in the last year of law school, both consumed by our theses and final exams. He stood out effortlessly, intelligent, charismatic, impeccable, even after hours in the library. I just wanted to graduate and start working. We coincided in an elective international law class. We exchanged notes, and one day he invited me for a coffee. I was surprised. He was popular and I went unnoticed. I accepted. That coffee was the first of many. I discovered that behind his perfect image he was fun, passionate about justice, and had a contagious sense of humor. We talked about everything: dreams, families, movies. Without realizing it, we became inseparable. Everyone saw us as the ideal couple, and at that moment, we were. We finished our degrees, passed the exams, and got good jobs. Ricardo was attentive, affectionate, and made me feel unique. I believed I was deeply in love. The first time I met his family, one weekend at their house, I was nervous. He had told me a lot about them: respected parents and a younger brother, Alejandro, the black sheep, the artist, the dreamer. The house was large, impeccable, with a perfect garden. His parents received me with cordiality, although their presence was imposing. The dinner passed with anecdotes and formal questions until Alejandro appeared. He arrived a little late, disheveled and with a paint stain on his shirt. His entrance changed the atmosphere completely. Alejandro was the antithesis of Ricardo, irreverent, with a spark in his eyes that invited you to get to know him. He greeted me with a mischievous smile and joked about how boring family dinners must be. Our eyes met and I felt something, a pang of curiosity, fleeting, but it was there. Ricardo looked at him with a mixture of affection and resignation, as if he were already used to his antics. At that moment, I did not give it any importance, not knowing the storm that instant would unleash in my life. Our courtship continued to go smoothly. We were the perfect couple in everyone's eyes, building a life together. Ambitious, we supported each other and shared dreams of a successful future. On weekends, if we were not working, we would visit his parents. Those visits became more frequent, and with them, my encounters with Alejandro. At first, it was just curiosity. Alejandro was so different from Ricardo, so free. While Ricardo and I talked about laws, Alejandro talked about art, travel, and living without ties. He always had a witty comment, a challenging look that made me smile. Our flirtations began so subtly that at first I did not even recognize them myself. They were glances that lasted a second longer, shared laughter over private jokes, innocent comments with double meanings. I remember one afternoon in his parents' garden. Ricardo was inside talking about work with his dad. Alejandro and I were sitting on the porch, supposedly studying. He looked at me intently and said, "You know, you have eyes that do not tell anyone what you really think." I froze. It was the first time someone had read me so well, had seen beyond my facade of the perfect girlfriend. I laughed nervously. I changed the subject, but something ignited inside me. A spark. Those moments became more frequent. When Ricardo was not around, Alejandro and I would find excuses to be alone. They were short chats, jokes, accidental touches that felt intentional. I felt like a teenager, excited and guilty at the same time. A part of me saw it as a harmless game, a way to release the tension of my structured life. But another part, the more honest one, could not avoid the excitement, that pang of adrenaline every time our eyes met. It was dangerous. I knew it, but I could not stop. I even noticed that Alejandro also sought out those moments. His gazes were more intense, his smiles more direct. Once in the kitchen, while Ricardo went to the bathroom, Alejandro came closer, gently took my hand, and said in a low voice, "You look so good today." Then he quickly let go of my hand upon hearing Ricardo return. My heart was pounding. I felt trapped between two worlds. The day of our graduation arrived, an event full of joy. We were celebrating at a restaurant with our families. Suddenly, Ricardo, with his characteristic confidence, stood up from the table. He looked at me smiling and took a small box out of his pocket. My stomach did a flip. He knelt in front of me. "My love," he began in a firm, emotion-filled voice, "we have built so much together. We have overcome so many challenges. You are the woman of my life, my perfect partner. Will you marry me?" People applauded. My family cried with emotion. The scene was perfect, straight out of a movie. In that instant, my mind split. One part of me, the one that loved Ricardo, wanted to scream, yes. The other, the secret part that flirted with Alejandro, felt a knot in my stomach. My eyes searched for Alejandro. He was sitting there, looking at us with an indecipherable expression. I took a breath, forced a happy smile, and said, "Yes, Ricardo, 1,000 times yes." He stood up, put the ring on my finger, and kissed me. The applause erupted again. I felt excited, yes, but beneath that glow, a deep, confusing sadness was invading me. The image of Alejandro, with that look I could not decipher, was etched in my memory. I had accepted the proposal of the man the world expected to be my husband, but a part of me mourned the loss of what I was just beginning to feel with his brother. At that moment, I did not know that this decision would be the beginning of my true downfall. The news of the wedding was received with joy by both families. The preparations began almost immediately. A whirlwind of decisions: the venue, the dress, the guest list. Our families threw themselves into it completely, organizing meetings and dinners. Ricardo's parents' house became the epicenter of it all. In the midst of that happy chaos, Alejandro remained distant. The knowing glances and discreet flirtations we had shared seemed to have vanished. He would just greet me with a casual gesture, sometimes with a forced smile, and then disappear into a room or become engrossed in his art. I thought that perhaps Ricardo's proposal had scared him, that he had realized the impossibility of the situation. I felt a little disappointed, but I tried to convince myself it was for the best. After all, I was getting married. The days flew by. The date was approaching, and the excitement of the wedding, mixed with the pressure and nerves, was overwhelming. There was only 1 week left until the big day when everything changed. I was at Ricardo's house, helping his mother with some centerpieces. He had gone out and his mother was on a call. Suddenly, I felt his presence. Alejandro stood in the doorway of the living room, looking at me with an intensity that chilled me to the bone. There was something different in his eyes, something desperate. "We need to talk," he said in a grave voice, almost a whisper. I followed him to the studio, an always messy room with his canvases and brushes. He closed the door behind us and the silence became heavy. "I cannot take this anymore," he blurted out suddenly with an emotion I had never heard in him before. He came closer to me and my heart started to pound. "I love you. From the first time I saw you, I knew you were different. I know you are going to marry Ricardo, my brother, but I cannot stay silent. I do not want to see you marry him." I was breathless. The confession hit me like a wave. I had always known there was something between us, but hearing it out loud, so raw, so real, left me speechless. "I know this is crazy," he continued, his voice barely a murmur, his eyes fixed on mine. "But what if we just left, you and I, far away from here? We could take the wedding money. I know it is a lot. It is right there in my parents' safe. We can run away. Go to the other side of the country, to a place where nobody knows us. Start from scratch, just you and me. What do you say?" The audacity of his proposal stunned me. To steal the wedding money, to leave everything, to leave Ricardo. It was crazy, a huge betrayal. But as he spoke, an image formed in my mind. Freedom, adventure, a life without the expectations of others, just with him. A part of me, the one that had felt that secret connection with Alejandro, screamed yes. My mind fought between reason and impulse, between the life I had planned and the passion he was offering me. I looked into his eyes, full of hope and desperation, and in that instant, in that messy studio, I made the most impulsive and destructive decision of my life. "Yes," I said, my voice barely audible. "Let us do it." The decision was made. That very night, while everyone slept, I crept to the studio. The safe was there, just as Alejandro had told me. With trembling hands, I opened it and took the money, a stack of bills that represented the dreams of two families. I felt a pang of guilt, a sharp pain for what I was about to do to Ricardo, to my parents, to his. But Alejandro's face, the promise of a different life, weighed more. We met at an agreed-upon spot. He already had a rented car with a small suitcase. We got in without saying a word, and as the car drove away from the house, I was leaving behind not only Ricardo and my old life, but also all the morality I once thought I possessed. I was running away with my fiancé's brother, with his wedding money, toward an uncertain future, and, for a fleeting instant, just for an instant, I felt strangely free. The escape was a whirlwind of emotions. For the first few days, fear was mixed with an intoxicating adrenaline. We drove aimlessly, as if speed would free us from guilt. The wedding money, which weighed like a stone in my hands, also gave us a strange sense of power. We decided to cross the country, visiting cities and towns we only knew from postcards. It was weeks of exploration, nervous laughter, and nights in roadside motels. Alejandro and I lived in a bubble. Disconnected from the world we had left behind, we tried to convince ourselves that this new life was what we had always wanted. We talked for hours, sharing dreams and fears we had never revealed to anyone else. We got to know each other on a deeper level, away from the expectations of our families and Ricardo's shadow. He was the artist, the dreamer, and for the first time, I felt liberated from the structured lawyer I had always been. The days were filled with walks, conversations until dawn, with that feeling that we were writing our own script. I felt that our relationship was strengthening with every kilometer we traveled, with every sunrise we watched together. After almost a month on the road, we decided to settle in a coastal city on the other side of the country. It was a vibrant place, with an active art scene and a carefree air that attracted us. We found a small, cozy apartment with a sea view. It was just what we needed, a refuge. Reality, however, was not long in catching up with us. The money, though considerable, would not last forever. I started looking for a job and got a position at a small law firm specializing in family law. It was not the big corporate firm I had dreamed of, but it allowed me to use my degree and feel productive. Alejandro, for his part, dedicated himself to his works. He spent hours in his makeshift studio in the apartment, painting and sculpting, with the hope of one day living off his art. Sometimes I would sit and watch him work and feel a peace that I had rarely experienced in my previous life. While we were building our new reality, the echo of the past haunted me. I had cut off all contact with my previous life, but guilt was a constant companion. From time to time, I regretted not being able to explain myself for having caused so much pain. A couple of weeks after starting work, I dared to contact a friend from university, Laura. I sent her a message from a new number, asking her not to tell anyone that I had contacted her. I needed to know. Laura's response was a punch to the gut. "Are you crazy? Do you know the hell you unleashed?" she wrote. "When you did not show up on the wedding day, people went crazy. The families are in conflict, Ricardo and your parents, his parents. It is chaos. They're accusing you of theft, you know? The wedding money disappeared and everyone knows you took it. Nobody can contact you. Your phone has no signal. Your mom is devastated. The worst part was what she told me about Ricardo. He is broken. He has not been the same since you left. He fell into a deep depression. He does not eat. He does not sleep. He stopped going to work for a while. His parents are desperate. They thought you were the love of his life. I cannot understand why you did it. He keeps asking, why did she cheat on me? Why did she leave with my brother?" Laura's words pierced my soul. The image of Ricardo, shattered because of me, filled me with anguish. I had run away seeking freedom, but I carried the weight of the destruction I had left behind. I thought that by starting over, the past would be erased, but no. The shadow of Ricardo, of my betrayal, of the broken families, hung over us, even in our small apartment with a sea view. The months following the escape were a slow but inexorable awakening. At first, the novelty of our life together and the excitement of being far from everything we knew kept us afloat. Our small apartment with a sea view seemed like a sanctuary. I worked at the law firm, which gave me structure and income. Alejandro, for his part, remained immersed in his art, but the fantasy, like all bubbles, began to burst. Alejandro was a dreamer, an artist with vision, but not the great misunderstood genius that we both believed he would be. His works, although beautiful to me, did not sell. The economic reality hit us hard. The wedding money dwindled, and soon the financial responsibilities fell on me. I started to feel the pressure. The salary from a small law firm was enough for us if we lived modestly, but not for our lifestyle or for Alejandro's artistic aspirations. I realized that I could not live on emotions and illusions alone. Passion, however intense, did not pay the rent or the food. One night, after an exhausting day at work, I tried to talk to him. "Alejandro," I said softly, "we need a plan. Your works are not selling, and we cannot live on my salary alone. You need to look for something else, at least temporarily, a part-time job, anything." He looked at me with an expression that combined surprise and resentment. "But this is my dream. You always knew I was an artist. You cannot ask me to give up on that." "I am not asking you to give up," I replied, my frustration growing. "I am asking you to support me. I am carrying everything. It is not fair." It was in that conversation that I felt the first real crack. His response chilled me. "You decided to be here with me. No one forced you. You came because you wanted to." His words, although true, sounded cold, almost accusatory. The guilt, which was already a constant in my life, intensified. It reminded me that I had chosen this path and therefore I had to bear the consequences alone. From that day on, frustration began to consume him. I watched him sink little by little. He stopped painting with the same passion and spent his days at home, increasingly apathetic. He started looking for quick fixes to our financial problems, which led us down a dangerous path. First, it was gambling. I found receipts from online casinos on his computer and watched as the money I earned with so much effort vanished in a couple of clicks. I confronted him, and he denied it at first. Then he downplayed it, promising to have it under control. But that was not the case. The downward spiral continued. One day I found something in his drawer, a small bag with a substance I immediately recognized. Drugs. My world came crashing down in that instant. The dreamy artist, the man for whom I had risked everything, was getting lost in an addiction. The reality hit me with the force of a hurricane. It was not just the lack of support, it was not just the frustration, it was watching the person I loved destroy himself and how I, in my blind impulsiveness, had been dragged down with him. I sat on the kitchen floor with the bag in my hand, feeling the tears fall. The image of Ricardo, devastated by my departure, was superimposed on the image of Alejandro, lost in his addiction. The comparison was brutal. At that moment, the raw truth hit me with an unbreakable force. I regretted it. I regretted every decision, every misstep that had led me there. I had sacrificed my life, my dignity, and the well-being of others for a fantasy that had become my worst nightmare. The discovery of the drugs was the final blow. For days I tried to talk to Alejandro, begging him to seek help. He was evasive, denying everything or downplaying the situation, promising to quit. But his promises faded as quickly as the substance in his system. Life in our small apartment became a hell of arguments, tense silences, and the constant worry of when the next time I would see him absent, lost, would be. One night I came home from work and the apartment was too quiet. I called his name, and there was no answer. An icy chill ran down my spine. I found him in the bathroom, lying on the floor. He had overdosed. Panic seized me with a force I had never felt before. My hands trembled uncontrollably as I tried to revive him, but he did not respond. In that moment of absolute terror, my mind went blank of everything except one idea: Ricardo. He was the only person who could know what to do, the only person who could help us. My hand trembled as I dialed his number, the number I had erased from my memory, but that deep down was always there. It rang several times and every second was an eternity. Just when I thought he would not answer, I heard his voice. "Hello," he said. His tone was cautious, almost distant. "Ricardo, it is me, I managed to say, my voice barely a whisper broken by tears and terror. I need your help. It is Alejandro. I think he has overdosed. There was a silence on the other end of the line, a silence that felt like an abyss. Then his voice, calmer than I expected, was laden with a deep pain and a barely contained resentment. Why are you calling me? He asked. And although he did not shout, the edge of his words cut me. You have no idea of the hell I went through because of you. I fell into a deep depression after you left. I did not sleep, I did not eat. My whole life fell apart. Do you know what it is like to plan a wedding, to invest all your dreams in one person, and for them to run away with your own brother overnight, stealing the money that our families had set aside with so much effort? The tears were running down my face, but I remained silent, listening to his pain, a pain that I myself had caused. My parents, he continued, his voice now with a hint of sadness and anger, are devastated. The family is broken. All hell broke loose. They want nothing to do with Alejandro. He betrayed them in the worst way. And me, it took me months of therapy, of fighting against that darkness to be able to get back on my feet and move forward. Guilt crushed me. His voice was the confirmation of all the damage I had caused. It was not an exaggerated version from Laura, it was the harsh reality that Ricardo had lived. Now, he said, his tone becoming firmer, you and Alejandro made your decisions. You both betrayed me. You both must be responsible for each other. My pleas became more desperate. Please, Ricardo, I am begging you. I know I hurt you so much and I am sorry, but Alejandro is very sick. I do not know what to do. Please, tell your parents what happened. He is their son. Just help us this one time. There was another long, tense silence. I could feel his internal debate. Finally, he sighed. A sound of weariness and resignation. All right, he said, his voice without a hint of warmth. I will tell them, but let it be clear, this is the last time I intervene. You dug your own hole. He hung up without another word. I was left with the phone in my hand, trembling, hope and fear beating in my chest. I had turned to the person I had hurt the most, and he, despite everything, had agreed to help. But his words echoed in my head, you dug your own hole, and I knew he was right. I hung up the phone, Ricardo's voice ringing in my head. There was no time for guilt at that moment. I had to act. My hands, though still trembling, managed to dial the emergency number. The ambulance arrived in minutes and the paramedics entered our small apartment, breaking the bubble of despair I had been submerged in. The minutes that followed were a blurry eternity. Shouts, instructions, the sound of the gurney. They put Alejandro in the ambulance and I followed him to the hospital. I sat in the waiting room, feeling every second like an hour, with fear chilling my blood. Finally, a doctor approached. He had survived the overdose. The news was such an immense relief that the tears I had been holding back overflowed. While I was waiting for more information, my phone vibrated. It was an unknown number. I hesitated to answer, but something told me to do it. On the other end of the line, I heard Ricardo's mother's voice. Where are you? She asked. Her voice, hoarse and laden with a mixture of relief, anger, and pain. He is okay, Alejandro. I gave her the hospital's address and confirmed that he was out of danger, though still sedated. The lady interrupted me, her tone hardening. I cannot believe what you did to my son, to Ricardo. He was destroyed because of you. You betrayed him and us. We hate what Alejandro did, how he embarrassed us, how he destroyed his brother. But he is still our son. I felt the sting of her words, but I knew they were deserved. I am so sorry, I barely managed to say. We knew Alejandro had problems with drugs for a while, she confessed. Her voice, now lower, with a hint of sadness. It was always difficult, but he had never gone this far. We thought that with art, with you, he would calm down. Guilt squeezed my chest again. I had also ignored the signs. I had preferred fantasy to reality. We are going to help him, the lady continued. We will put him in a rehabilitation center, the best one. But I want you to know something. You are completely on your own. Do not expect anything from us. You made your choice. She hung up, leaving me with the weight of responsibility and loneliness. It was the rawest truth I had ever heard. I had burned all my bridges and now I was facing the consequences. The next day, Ricardo's parents arrived in the city. When I saw them in the waiting room, the gentleman, his face hardened by worry and resentment, barely spoke to me. The lady looked at me with an indecipherable expression, a mixture of anger and sadness, but she also largely ignored me. They spoke with the doctors. They arranged for Alejandro's immediate transfer to a rehabilitation center. I watched as they took him away on a gurney, unconscious, heading towards an uncertain future. Ricardo's parents, my former in-laws, my supposed family accomplices, did not give me a single farewell glance. They left me alone in the hospital with the echo of their words and the cold reality. I had chosen my path and now I had to walk it alone. Alejandro would leave to heal, surrounded by the support of his family, while I was stranded in an unknown city, with a job I was not passionate about and the weight of my decisions crushing me. The days dragged on, heavy and empty since Alejandro was taken away. The silence in the apartment was deafening, broken only by the sound of my own guilt and the growing desperation inside me. I continued going to work, an automaton in my routine, trying with every paycheck to cover the gambling debts Alejandro had left. The money disappeared as quickly as it came in, and the feeling of being trapped was overwhelming. I tried to contact Alejandro's parents, Ricardo, over and over again. Call after call, messages that went unanswered. The lady always hung up. The gentleman never answered. Ricardo simply did not respond to my calls or messages. It was as if they had erased me from their lives, turned into a ghost from the past they did not want to remember. Loneliness enveloped me like a cold cloak, and depression took root deeper and deeper in my soul. One afternoon, returning from work, the burden became unbearable. I needed to talk to someone, to feel a little human warmth, to vent this torment that was consuming me. With my heart in my throat, I dialed my own parents' number. It was the first time I had done so since I left. I was trembling. I needed their affection, their forgiveness, their voice. My mother answered. Her voice at first was cautious, filled with a mixture of relief and pain. "Daughter," she said, and her voice broke. We had a deep and sad conversation. I told her what had happened, the lies, the escape, Alejandro's addictions, the theft. I did not omit any details. She listened to me in silence, and when I finished, she sobbed. "You do not know how disappointed we are, daughter," my mother said, her voice imbued with infinite sadness. Not just because of the shame, not just because of the damage to Ricardo's family, but because of seeing you become this. "We believed in you, daughter. We believed you were a good woman." Her words, though painful, were a reflection of my own truth. I had failed not only others, but also myself. Suddenly, I heard my father's voice. He had taken the phone from my mother. His voice was cold, emotionless, every word a stab. "Listen to me carefully. To me, my daughter died the day she ran away from her wedding. I have nothing more to say to you." The line went dead. The dial of my phone seemed to weigh a ton in my hand. My own parents had disowned me, not legally, but from the heart. The last hope of redemption, of an affection that would save me, had vanished. The next day, with a lump in my throat and dying hope, I dialed Ricardo's number again. I needed to hear his voice, even if it was just to receive more reproaches. This time, to my surprise, he answered. "What do you want?" he said, his voice firm, without the pain of our previous conversation, but with a coldness that pierced me. "I just wanted to know how you were," I stammered, feeling my voice pathetic. There was a sigh on the other end of the line, one that was not of anger, but of weariness, of having overcome something. "I have already rebuilt my life," he said. His words were like a punch to the stomach, but also, strangely, a pang of relief for him. I finally met someone new, someone who makes me happy again. I could feel the genuine joy in his voice, and that, paradoxically, made me feel even more alone. "I have no contact with my brother, I am not interested, but I understand why my parents are helping him. He is their son, but you and I, there is nothing more to say. I do not want to hear from you ever again." He hung up again. The world came crashing down on me. I was alone, completely alone. I had destroyed everything in my path and now I had nothing left. I collapsed on the sofa, tears streaming freely down my face. The room felt suffocating. Every object, reminder of the life I had wasted. My gaze fell on a small box among the few items Alejandro had left. I opened it. Inside, hidden among his sketchbooks, I found a small bag, one that he had saved and that had gone unnoticed when his parents collected his belongings. I took it in my hand, the small package cold and tempting. The feeling of desperation was overwhelming, the emptiness unbearable. And as I held it, I wondered for the first time if the only way to escape my reality was the same one that had led Alejandro to the bottom. And here I am, facing the relentless judgment of the internet. I acknowledge my role in this story. I know I will be the bad guy, without needing confirmation. I can anticipate every comment, every criticism that will come. So, why am I writing this? Am I seeking validation for my pain, to sink deeper into this depression that suffocates me, or is there a part of me, however small, that desperately pleads to find a friendly voice, a little encouragement in the midst of the storm that my life has become?